What's up, guys? Welcome back to Sports Spectrum. I am Jason Romano. So excited today because I'm wearing my black New York Mets jersey from like 1999 here today. And I never wear jerseys when I do interviews, and I try to keep it pretty even keel. And obviously, we play no favorites at Sports Spectrum other than the Lord. But today, James McCann joins us on Sports Spectrum, and he is now with my favorite baseball team that I've been rooting for since I was a little kid back in the 80s, the New York Mets. And James, the newly minted New York Mets catcher, joins us here on the show. James McCann, welcome back to Sports Spectrum. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. How are you doing?
I'm great, my friend. Great to have you back. And what do you think of the black jerseys? I'm rocking the black. I know I don't know how much you've even talked to your new teammates yet, but I saw Pete Alonso tweeted recently a picture of cleats that he was preparing for the black uniforms. Should we bring the black uniforms back? What are you thinking?
I think it's a good look.
Yeah.
I saw that same picture of Pete's cleats, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to reach out to him and see if he knows something that I don't know, so I can make sure that I'm ready if we do bring those back.
I hope so. I mean, what's the harm? Even if you bring them back on a Friday, on a Friday night home game or something like that, that'd be a lot of fun. I know Mets fans for many years love the black jerseys. We also love the traditional blue as well. But congrats on the new contract, man. This must have been, I mean, you signed one of the first free agents to sign really early in the process back in December. Has it sunk in yet that you're a member of the New York Mets?
I think it's starting to sink in. It's free agency is something that you work so hard for. In baseball, it means that you've hung around long enough where you get to go hopefully choose your team. And the Mets for me was a choice that they made it very simple. They didn't really even need to sell me. I knew the direction that the team was headed in with new ownership and bringing back Sandy Alderson and just everything that they're trying to accomplish there is something I was ready to sign up for, and I couldn't be more excited to be a part of.
Tell me in the process of, making that decision. You said they made it pretty easy for you, but there's still an element. I know your faith's important, and certainly prayer is an important part of your life, and talking to your wife and on all the scenarios that have to come into play when you say yes, because once you sign, right? And that's the decision that you make. So take me through the process of, the season ending and then kind of thinking about where you might want to go and maybe some of the spiritual angles of this or sides of this and making that decision.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. When season was over, my wife and I, we discussed a lot of what ifs and where we would choose and where we'd rather not be and whatever other conversations we had. But the thing that we kept going back to in our prayer was that God would make the choice easy for us.
Mm.
That was something that a lot earlier in my walk in faith, back when I was a senior in high school, choosing what college to go to. In the moment, I didn't know that this is where God was taking me, but I chose to go to the University of Arkansas, and I grew up in Southern California. And I joke, I didn't know where Arkansas was on the map, much less how good their baseball team was or how good the university was. I just knew they were somewhere, down the South, and I'd never been there and never, bothered to pay attention to, really anything there. But the decision to go there was just, it was like a no-brainer. Words couldn't really describe why I chose to go there. There's a lot of things that led me there. From playing in the SEC to, the coaching staff to the facilities, all that was great, but there's an external thing that I couldn't put words to as to why this is where I was supposed to be. Fast forward, 5, 10, 15 years later, it's pretty simple as to why I was there. There's so many things that came from it. It led me to a professional career in baseball. It led me to meet my future wife. There's just a ton of different things that came from it. So being that this was probably the next biggest decision other than marriage, since college, that was my prayer, was that God would make my answer simple and easy, and he'd leave no doubts in my mind about where I was supposed to be, and that was our prayers, that God would lead us to where he wanted us to be. And the Mets was the answer.
Well, like I said, I've been a Mets fan since 1983. That would be 7 years before you were born. So that makes me really old, James. But it's been 35 years since they've won a World Series. And listen, I know the Mets fans, they are loyal, they are passionate. I have to imagine you've heard from some of these fans and understand the passion that they have and the excitement that they have to have somebody like you join the team.
Yeah, no, that's that's something. It's funny. I've actually never played at Citi Field except for in a futures game back when they hosted the AllStar Game in 2013.
Yeah.
I was in the futures game, but with the interleague play and having spent my whole career in the American League, I've never gotten to play in front of a Mets fan base other than the ones that were there at the futures game. So I'm excited. I actually train in the off season with a couple of pitchers, Steven Matz and Brad Brock, and they have nothing but phenomenal things to say about the organization and the fan base. And something that's neat too is they've talked numerous times, and I also heard from the manager and the pitching coach and just the group of guys and individuals on the team and their faith and how strong of a group of guys it is. I'm excited about that too.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. James McCann is joining us here on Sports Spectrum. You mentioned off-season training with guys like Steven Matz. What does off-season training for a Major League Baseball catcher look like? Like, do you take time off initially when the season's over? When do you ramp it up? And what is an off-season train? Because you have to, obviously defense is important for every player, but for a catcher specifically, you got to keep your defensive skills just as kind of honed as your hitting skills. What does that look like for you in the off-season?
Yeah, it's well, I can tell you that it's changed a lot since I was 24.
Okay.
It's funny. I remember vividly having conversations with veteran players. One that comes to mind is Torrey Hunter, and him telling me about, yeah, wait till you're 30. And at 23, 24, I'm kind of laughing like, yeah, okay, whatever. 30, you're still young. But he's right. He's right. Your body reacts differently at 30. Your body needs to be trained differently. So that's something that is a constant adjustment for me. Is I've got to listen to my body. So heading to the off season, I don't do any catching stuff. Really, I don't do any baseball stuff until December.
Hmm.
December is when I start throwing again, when I start hitting again, when I start doing some catching type drills. But I take off up till then, where all I do is train and get my body in the right frame to be able to move forward with another full season. Um, so once I get to December, it's kind of a start getting back into the swing of things baseball wise, and then once the new year hits, it's a full go of throwing and hitting and catching wise. You do stuff off a machine. You do stuff with your workout buddies. You catch bullpens here and there, but at the end of the day, the thing that's so hard to get as a catcher is that game experience. And the only way that you get your legs in shape is by playing in a game. So that's really spring training. It doesn't matter how many squats you do in the off season. It doesn't matter how many bullpens you catch in the off season. There's just nothing quite like getting that game shape for your legs.
Well, last year, we had some spring training and then it got cut short. And then there was spring training 2.0. It was just a year unlike any other when you think about COVID and the pandemic and how it affected everyone, but even in the world of sports and particularly baseball. But for you, what was that year like last year, adjusting to COVID restrictions, still playing the game that you played since you were a kid and having to pause for a few months there when you had ramped up, like you said, everything in January and February and March, and then suddenly March 12th comes and stop.
Yeah, I think just like anybody in any profession, the unknown. That was the big thing. We spent several days deciding. We were in Arizona for spring training with the White Sox last year. Spent several days deciding, do we go home? Do we stay here? Do we wait out things here? And there's just so many unknowns that we finally landed on, it's going to be several weeks. Let's go back home. And several weeks turned into several months, and everyone knows the story from there. But kind of like the way that we approach everything in our lives is just trusting that God's plan will prevail in the end. I know that 2020 was awful for a lot of people. I know that a lot of lives have been lost, from during this pandemic. But if I can look back, the one thing in 2020 for me and my family was getting to spend time together as a family at home. We, at that time, our boys had just turned 2. So, they're between 2 and 2.5. Being home in warm weather, getting to play outside every day with my boys, and getting to cook dinner every night, and just, those were that time. I know one day when I'm, old and my kids are gone, I'm going to look back on 2020 and, you know, think fondly of the time that we had at home together, which is crazy because I know how terrible 2020 was, but just that time that we'll never get back of having, really being stuck in home in our house together. It was a silver lining as far as our family's concerned.
Yeah, as far as you're a baseball player, as long as you're a baseball player, you might never be home in April and May and June with your kids until you're done playing baseball, right? I mean, that had to be so weird, and probably as an athlete, because you're so routine based, you're amping up to play, but at the same time, you get that time with your kids.
Yeah, I joked I'd never seen my grass so green. I leave, it's still winter, and when I come back, it's the fall, and the grass has gotten burnt from the summer sun. So, seeing the leaves grow on the trees, and just having a different view of life. Like I said, 2020, I never want to have to go through something like that again. But at the same time, we did have a silver lining and getting to be together as a family.
You think back to 2020 and even into early 2021. I mean, the pandemic's not over, but we're hopefully turning the corner a little bit here. But when you think back to last year, maybe just about a year ago when this pandemic hit, what's the lesson you think the Lord showed you, the big lesson that the Lord taught you, maybe over those few months, or even just looking back from the year, and it's something that you're going to take with you forever? What's that lesson?
I think the biggest lesson is slow down. Um, like I said, getting to be home and literally not having anything that we could do. Things are closed. There's nothing to go do other than be home with your family. Even now that we've turned the page, it's like every day there's something new that we got to go do, And I think that the big thing is slow down and enjoy the moment that you do have, because tomorrow is never a for sure thing.
James McCann is joining us, the New York Mets catcher on Sports Spectrum. I want to ask you about discipleship. What does discipleship look like for you during a long baseball season? And last year obviously was a weird year, but even last year, I'm sure you had some opportunities, and certainly your faith doesn't just go away, even though there's COVID and there's restrictions. So, what did that look like maybe last year, and just in general as a baseball player during the season for you to stay connected to the Lord?
Yeah, in general, there's usually really every team I've been on, there's been a solid group of 3 to 4 guys um, that we get together and meet. Sometimes it may be in a hotel room. 2020 was different because we weren't allowed to go to each other's hotel rooms.
All right.
But we would, meet in someone's hotel room and maybe order a room service, and just dive into the Word together. Kind of bounce things off of each other. And kind of be that accountability partner too, as far as pushing each other to get in the Word, and pushing each other just to be better men. And then also, accountability partners as far as reaching out to other guys on the team and trying to get other guys on the team involved in any type of um, I don't want to say Bible study, because sometimes that pushes guys away, but just creating that fellowship. If you're around guys long enough and they start to realize there's something different about you, they're going to ask you what it is. They're going to seek why you have a different view on life, and that's when you can show them the Lord. But that's something I really try and do is not be the Bible thumper type that pushes people away, but more just reflecting Christ authentically, to where people want to know why I view something a certain way, or why I act a certain way. And that's when I can, that's when I've got them hooked per se, is I can share the Lord with them.
Have you experienced that? Has that been the case where, you just be yourself, right? And you have conversations with people, and it opens up doors for dialogue and opens up a chance for you to kind of be open about who you are, what you stand for.
Yeah, no, that's I love to share my story and my testimony, and that's kind of how I do it. I don't walk around asking if people want to hear my story. I kind of wait for them to ask the
Sure.
question, and next thing you know, I get to share my story, share my testimony, and next thing you know, we've been talking for 30 minutes, and they didn't even realize they opened the door to talk about the Lord.
If people are listening to this and did not hear you share your testimony, they're probably like, Romano, would you ask him about his testimony? Listen, we spent almost a half hour, I would say 3 years ago, and James shared his entire testimony with us. So I'm going to link to that in show notes so you can go back and hear his story, because it really is a powerful one. In fact, you almost didn't make it to, day 2 of being born, which is a pretty crazy thing. So I want people to go back and listen to that to hear your whole story. But the last time we had you on, you were just a few months, uh, I guess, preparing to be a dad of twins. And you mentioned your boys, they're now what, 3? Is that right? 3 years old? And
Just turned
so,
3.
yeah, just turned 3 years old. So let's go back. It was October of 2017 when you were on last time. So 3 years later, tell us the story, because I know that there was, I wouldn't say touch and go, but the twins were in the hospital for a little bit. They were born, it's Kane and Christian, right? Born in December of 2017.
Correct. Yeah. So my wife and I found out we were pregnant during the season of 2017, and we were almost immediately turned over to high risk doctors. And we didn't know what we were, really getting ourselves into when that happened. We thought it was more so because we were having twins. And really, what ended up happening, long story short, we were extremely high risk, and we ended up the boys were born December 6th of 2017 at 30 weeks. So their due date wasn't actually until February. So they were born 10 weeks premature.
Mm.
And we were at the Vanderbilt Hospital, and I can't say enough good things about the nurses and the doctors there. But it was a God thing. We had actually that same off season moved from Fayetteville, Arkansas, to the Nashville area, and we're just kind of thrown to a doc. I don't want to say thrown to a doctor. We were referred to a doctor, but we didn't know who we were going to, what we were getting ourselves into. And then next thing you know, our boys are born, and we're living in the hospital for 7 weeks. And it's as crazy as it was. We knew they were going to be born early. We didn't know it was going to be 10 weeks early. But at the same time, going back to my birth story and my testimony, my wife and I, we were at peace the whole time with it, because we truly believed that it was God just adding to our story. It was God adding another, miracle to our story, and 2 miracles. And here we are 3 years later, and they're healthy as could be, and running around, and just like any crazy 3-year-old toddler boy should be.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast to talk about parenting twin boys at 3 years old. I can imagine. I want to really dive into the peace aspect of what you just described, though, because I think a lot of people are going through it and have gone through it. And some people think, how can you find peace in the midst of what should be, and probably still is, a very anxious, a very unnerving time and situation when you're in the hospital every day for that long? Take me into that, you and your wife, and those conversations, and really that peace, because the Bible talks about peace that passes, I should say, or surpasses all understanding. And that's what I'm thinking when you say that. I'm like, I sometimes can't understand that, even though I am a follower of Christ, obviously, how somebody could find peace in the midst of a really difficult situation like that.
Yeah, well, like I said, for the listeners, you have to go listen to my story, my testimony, to know where it really starts for me and my family. Um, but it's just a trust thing. I can go back at so many different points in my life, and think of why, here I should be really anxious. Here I should be really questioning the Lord. There's so many different areas where you can look back and do that. But at the end of the day, everything turns out to be okay. It doesn't mean it was easy during that time, but you can still have that sense of peace deep down, knowing that, hey, eventually I'm going to come out of this. The story of Job is one that always gets to me, of how he lost everything, and he still kept the faith. So it's certain things like that it just, you have to remind yourself it's not easy. It's not, but staying in the Word, and I'm very blessed with my wife, and who she is as a person and as a believer, that we can kind of bounce things off each other. And one day she may be having a rough day, and I can lift her up, and one day I may be having a rough day, and she can lift me up. So we form that team. um, and I didn't mention this about our boys, but when all the testing came back after they were born, there's a lot of stuff that was going on, but there's only like, I want to say there's less than 50. I want to say like 42, 43 known cases identical to ours.
Hmm.
And of that number, over 25 of them resulted in at least one of the children not making it.
Wow.
So we're really, a statistic, and it's crazy to think about. But like I said, we never doubted. We knew that God was going to provide one way or another. And the thing that constantly reminded us is as tough as things were for us, as mad as we wanted to get, as anxious as we wanted to be, every day there's a reminder in the hospital. You look at someone next to you, you look at someone across the hospital hallway, and you say, man, we don't have it so bad.
Mm.
And that
Yeah.
was kind of the thing, that one of the things that kept us going is, I don't want to say that we compared ourselves to other people, but you know, every time you think there's something going bad in your life, there's always somebody else that would change spots with you in a heartbeat.
Sure.
And that's something that we kept going back to, knowing that God had our best interest in mind.
And as we record this on Zoom, there's a picture behind you with your two boys. I presume that's the All-Star Game in 2019. And that had to be a pretty cool moment for you because all of that was happening in the early part of 2018. And then here you are, 2019, and you're an All-Star with the White Sox. And a lot was changing then to play even for those 2 seasons with Chicago when you ended up there. What was that experience like being an All-Star? I mean, you also have the jersey over your left shoulder as well, which looks like it's signed by everybody on the team. That's my guess because there's a lot of writing
Yeah.
on it. So
Yep.
that's a pretty cool thing to have hanging, and a pretty obviously a pretty awesome opportunity. What was that like to be an All-Star and play in that game?
Yeah, it was a whirlwind. If you go back to the immediate season after our boys were born, 2018, I was still with Detroit, and it was my worst year offensively, and I ended up getting non-tendered and let go by the Tigers. So it was kind of one of those moments, like, I mean, questioning, why is this happening? What's going on? And again, it was just God providing. Had I not had that season, I would have stayed in Detroit, and who knows if I'm an All-Star for Chicago in 2019. So it's just kind of one of those things that you trust God. You trust that He's, like, I think it's Jeremiah 29:11. He knows the plans that He has for you, and it's for you to prosper.
Yeah.
I'm blessed that it happened so quickly. A lot of times it may take years to find out, why something may happen. But the actual All-Star Game experience, words really don't describe it. Getting to be around the best players in the game. I got a hit in the game. I made a nice catch in the game. But I tell people this all the time. My favorite part of it was sitting on the field with my boys, watching the home run derby. And here they are. I mean, they're a year and a half years old, and they're tracking home run balls. They're high fiving, the guys in the home run derby. And I'm like, man, this kid is not even 2 years old. He has no idea how lucky he is. And so being able to do that, the family aspect of that week was just so much fun.
Well, and your boys can now say that you're playing with the 2019 Home Run Derby champion because Pete Alonso, Met fans know this, won the Home Run Derby that year and had this incredible rookie season. And now you get to be teammates with him. There's a lot of great players on the Mets this year. You got to be excited.
I'm really excited. I'm really excited to catch guys like DeGrom and Stroman. Jeff McNeil and I played at the same Little League. And then obviously Alonso and bringing over Lindor. I mean, that's a huge
Right?
piece. So
Yeah.
I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Should be a lot of fun. As we wind down, last question I want to ask you is maybe just some encouragement for our listeners that you can provide. Maybe it's a Bible verse or something that's been on your heart lately that you can kind of leave our audience, whether it's from a faith perspective or just something that you've been kind of, I don't know, something that's been encouraging you lately.
Yeah, I'll just go with the Bible verse that I sign. Every time I sign my name, I sign Mark 10:27. It says, man said, or I'm sorry, for Jesus said, with man this is impossible, but not with God, for all things are possible. And I really, that's my favorite verse because if you go back to my birth story again, doctors said it wasn't possible, and here I am, doing just fine. So God had different ideas, and with where our world is right now, where our country is, the pandemic, the unrest, everything that's going on. I really, really encourage everyone to turn their eyes to the Lord, and that'll help them find that peace. And the more that we can do that as believers, the more you're gonna influence non-believers to do the same thing. And at the end of the day, if our eyes are on the Lord, and we trust that anything can be done, in His power, then we're gonna be just fine.
Faith, hope, and love. He is James McCann, the New York Mets catcher. And again, I'm rocking the black jersey. So, James, I'm expecting to see him on a Friday night, hopefully at least once in 2021. But either way, it's going to be fun to hopefully get down to Citi Field. We get some fans down there. My daughter and I will take a drive and go see you in person. But congratulations on the new contract, on your new role with the Mets, and all the best to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.